Thank you for a very kind introduction. On the dais, Chief Secretary, Mrs. Usha Sharma ji, who was very kind to have said some very warm words about me and having actually humbled me by saying that he learned a lot from me. In fact, it is the other way around. When I came into the government, I had absolutely no experience. I could hardly spell out what is it meant by ARPG because I was a professional medico and she was already there for more than 20 years. So I'm glad that we had such a gracious senior officer to work with in the ministerial capacity. And incidentally, in the same department, which is also hosting this conference today. Mr. Srinivas, whom I hardly need to introduce to this august audience, he's not only made this department very vibrant, one of those departments which was not very much preferred by many of the secretaries. But I think that precisely proves the point that most of them spend most of their time looking for another posting instead of focusing on their department. And since he focused and see what are the results, it's done wonders now. I think among the secretaries in the government of India, he is the most well-known person in all these states and union territories across the country because all of these competitive award initiatives that have been undertaken under him and also because of the regional conferences held in different parts of the country. We have Mr. Alok Kumar, Principal Secretary, Government of Rajasthan, Mr. Naveen, Mr. Rajput from the Department of Administrative Reform, Senior Officers of the Government of Rajasthan, the award winners, ladies and gentlemen. I must compliment the Government of Rajasthan and the team led by Chief Secretary Mrs. Usha Sharma for having very heartily cooperated with Srinivas and his team to make this event successful and also receive a kind of a response which is, I'm sure, going to be rewarding for all of us. Now the question is why this regional conference, or as Srinivas was saying, they've been holding it and this is possibly the Silver Jubilee, the 25th one of this of its kind in this sequence. You would appreciate that Prime Minister Modi has a special penchant for governance, a natural penchant, and also a commitment to governance, which was very obvious even when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat and then later on he replicated the same as Prime Minister. And I think the most evident example of this is that soon after taking over as Prime Minister in New Delhi, one of the earliest decisions taken by him was to do away with the practice of getting your certificates attested. And through DOPT, the order was issued that self-attestation was not allowed. So many of these governance reforms undertaken at his initiative are not only limited to governance per se, but they have a huge socio-economic impact and implication as well. For example, allowing self-attestation also sent out a message that look here, a new government has taken over in New Delhi, which has the capacity to trust the youth of this country. So you don't have to get yourself verified by somebody else. And why not? If we have more than 70% of the population of India below the age of 40, and if we don't trust them, how are we going to move forward? And soon after, I think, in one of his first Independence Day addresses from the Red Fort, he made an appeal to do away with the interviews in the recruitment processes so that the complaints of inappropriate appointments having been made could be done away with, because there were allegations at times that a candidate securing 100 marks in written was not found to be getting enough or the deserved in the interview and vice versa. So to give a level playing field. So what I'm trying to say is that this was a Prime Minister, this is a government which has placed governance at a very high priority, unlike many of the earlier governments. So he never, every pursuit, every ministry, every new scheme undertaken, as Madam Usha Sharma ji was mentioning, DBT. DBT is the bottom line. And that itself is a game changer. You have eliminated the middlemen. Now the next stage would be to change the mindset. Because in my own constituency, I came across in a remote area one of the MSME beneficiaries who was getting through DBT. And the poor person had been so much accustomed and conditioned over the years by the kind of undesirable influences of the society that after the DBT amount got deposited in his account, he took out 200 and very conveniently went and placed it on the table of the BDO. Yeah, it sounded quite amusing, but at the same time, I felt very pained. And I told my colleague, I said, look at what a damage we have done to the society. The poor man who is not much exposed, does not know the reform is basically meant to change his lifestyle and his state of affairs, is actually not able to realize this. He is being so much put into that kind of a feudal mindset. So I think these are hugely socio-economic reforms, all of these which were mentioned by the Chief Secretary just now. And therefore, to carry this vision of good governance to every nook and corner of the country, I think the idea of holding these regional conferences was muted because we do have all the other means, but we have realized that reaching out physically to different states, different union territories has an impact of a different kind, and it also gives a kind of a bonding which Mr. Srinivas has gained and is now become, as I said, one of the most popular civil servants across the country. For the simple reason, also because just as the PM Excellence Awards begin, young boys and girls, young collectors come looking for him. Who is Srinivas? Will he put our entry inside? So a place like Sardar Patel Bhavan, which was seldom visited when Mrs. Usha Sharma was there, is now become a buzz place. So that is the impact when you reach out. So that I think is the reason of reaching out through these regional conferences. As he said, we have moved to every part of the country, and I had been passionately, personally pushing it forward. When we went to Northeast, he said we should go to Guwahati. I said Guwahati no longer Northeast, we should go to Itanagar. And many of our officers, including Mr. Srinivas himself, were the first time visiting Itanagar after having 30 years of service. So that has also given a new dimension to our outlook. So we've gone down south, Hyderabad, up there, Srinagar, this side, Chandigarh, Lucknow, virtually every part of the country. And then when we talk of good governance, as was being rightly mentioned by the Chief Secretary, what is good governance? I think the essential ingredients are transparency, be the accountability, see the citizen participation, the Nagarik Bhagedari, which the Prime Minister mentioned in 5 Pran jo unhone bataye, the time-bound delivery, prompt grievance redressal, and a corruption-free administration. These are some of the essential ingredients of good governance, whichever be the country across the world and whichever be the form of government. And all of these are achievable with much greater ease than ever before because of the technology available to us. So through DBT, we can silently eliminate the middleman. Through Swamitva, we can silently eliminate the Patwari. So much of technological benefit is available and it's made things much easier for us. It's only now up to us how far and to what extent and to what last mile can we deliver it. Ideally to the last man in the last queue. And also, at the same time, in the last 9 years or so, a very diligent effort has been made to provide a optimally favorable work environment for the officials. And that is why, while we are using the most modern applications like biometry, the face recognition technology, we were the first in the Department of Pensions, also headed by Mr. Srinivas in the government, which use face recognition technology for the elderly pensioners. They could just look into their camera and they could get reflected as the evidence of life to the concerned bank. So the technology which was earlier being used mostly by the crime world was for the first time used for a good cause under his leadership. Then the automated grievance monitoring system guided by artificial intelligence. Again, introduced in this department. And as I said, we have tried to create a very healthy synergy of this modern application with some of the, without losing room for the traditional ethos, which Mr. Srinivas in his discourse was referring to as the Chintan Shivar. So I think is the best optimal mix of the two, the Chintan Shivar with artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence cannot be, Chintan cannot be artificial, and the artificial can't be Chintan. And whatever it is for us to assimilate. And this concept combines the two. Then the e-office. I think the outcome of these 9 years of effort has been that we have now virtually 90% of working online. The e-governance, as Prime Minister once said, E stands for environment friendly, also stands for economic, also stands for easy government. And the outcome of this was that when COVID struck all of a sudden, our work didn't get interrupted for a single day. And when Prime Minister was pushing this digital India and online working, he had not been predicted that there's going to be something like COVID. Nobody in the world knew. I'm sure everybody agrees. But we had already started moving in that direction. So that if tomorrow an imponderable happens, an unforeseen catastrophe happens, we should not be taken aback all of a sudden by surprise. We are already prepared to meet the crisis of any form, and we did. And we have evidence for that. In fact, in the Central Information Commission, Madam Sharma would be glad to know, our disposal of RTIs increased. This is happening online totally. And since I gathered some amusement by juggling into all these data, so I showed the Central Information Commission, the then Central Information Commission, which possibly he had also not noticed, that in the month of June 2020, their disposal was higher compared to the corresponding month of June 2019, when actually this thing started. So the corresponding 21. So lockdown period was higher compared to the other period. And also because they were also working on the holidays. And one of the junior officers said the new dictator should be minimum in attendance, maximum output. Our CAT didn't get interrupted even for a single day. Our CP gram, which was being mentioned by Mr. Srinivas, has recorded disposal of 97%, 98%. So these are the virtues of having been there online. And we were already there. And some important headways also made, like in CP grams, the universalization, auto routing, you put it and goes through all the ministries. The artificial intelligence driven automatic flagging and filtration. So you can make out the spam RTIs. You have some of the habitual RTI complainants. I would not say activists because that's not, they don't like that word. But so this can actually identify a particular name, how many RTIs have been fined, 6,000 in 1 month, and what subject so it puts it into spam. In fact, I suggested that to the Information Commissioner yesterday only, that we could introduce there also, I mean, just as CP for RTIs, and also in the other departments, wherever you have a grievance cell. Language translation is there in all the 22. You don't have to be knowing Hindi or English. Then we have One Nation, One Portal they have set up. And now they have centralized it, connecting all these states. And I think one of the most notable features which gave this department also visibility and added to the popularity of Mr. Srinivasa, I know popularity or his being sought after for compulsive reasons, is the change in the format of the PM Excellence Award and the Civil Service Day. Earlier on, Civil Service Day was a single day affair. They would have more of a fellowship. They would just gather together, recall their batches, batch so and so year, batch so and so, बच्चे कहाँ पढ़ते, अमेरिका पढ़ते, ये पढ़ते, वो पढ़ते. They'll have a good fellowship meeting after 20 years and go back after a banquet or whatever. We changed it into an academic affair, like a 2-day conference, something like the one we are having. We split into different sessions so that along with fellowship, you also have some food for thought, not only food for gut. Earlier it was mostly food for gut. So civil service servant only taking food for gut doesn't sound very respectable. Simultaneous food for thought covers up the food for gut as well. So we converted 2 years, and the PM Excellence Award was actually become an award which was sometimes being given by default. Like for example, we had to give awards to the collectors mostly by the individual profile. So you would see in Punjab, एक को देना है जी, पंजाब को नहीं दिया था, चले इसको ये पटियाला वाला देसी सूची वाली हो गया, बाला इसको भी हो गया, जलंधर वाला भाई इसको दे दिया. So it was like that happening. It happened in many states. So I also saw, but we were not actually honoring the merit. We were by exclusion also doing so. So now it has been done online entry based flagship program. 5, 6 flagship programs of that given year are floated out online. And the result is that we have almost 100% entry from across more than 750 districts that we have in this country. Every collector is trying to apply for this. And a collector can actually win the award twice also for the flagship. So it's purely performance based on an objective criteria. That is what makes him much sought after. Though I don't mean that he gives the award only to those who seek him. Please have faith in the objectivity of his judgment. But what I'm saying is that it has also created enthusiasm among young collectors to give their best to push forward the flagship program. So in a way, it also serves the community, serves the nation, because it also moves forward on a fast track the flagship program. Then the district governance index is something which is again a very scientific benchmark, which is now going down. Prashasan gaon ki or aspirational district, I think one of the most fantastic ideas floated by this government. And since I was also associated with that team, mostly it is absolutely scientifically based, where the rating of the district stands. It's not necessarily a backward district. You have about 41 parameters. A district could be the best. Most of the officers know. In healthcare, it may be low in education. So how best to raise it to the best education level district of that state, vis-a-vis then to the best of the country. So that continuous dashboard, real-time competition, gives us the zeal and also prompts us to reach out for the best. It's absolutely scientific. And as I said in the beginning, this is also changing our mindset, socio-economic level, mindset even at the political level and at the level of the masses. For example, when this list of 115 aspiration districts was published in the newspapers, early morning I started receiving phone calls from my constituency. कि साहब क्या फायदा वो दिल्ली बैठे हुए, अपने क्षेत्र का एक भी जिला नहीं डाल सके. तो फला वहां मंत्री जी थे, तो रेल के मंत्री बने तो गांव तक पहुंचा गए स्टेशन. तो मैंने कहा साहब वो जमाना चला गया कि कोई रेल मंत्री बने तो गांव में अपना रेल स्टेशन खोल दे, मुसाफिर हो के ना हो, हवाई अड्डा खोल दे. So now this is purely objectively determined scientific criteria, and those in the ruling dispensations will have to get used to it, and the people also will have to get used to it. And we cannot help it. This is third generation after independence. People are no longer going to be taken. And if we are frank with them, forthright with them, reason out with them, they'll also be convinced. Like recently government, because time has come for all of us to learn in administration, whether we are in the civil services or in the political setup, to have a free, frank dialogue with our stakeholders instead of, putting up false pretensions. Like recently, government floated a policy. They drew up some film location spots have been identified by, I think, the Culture and Tourism Ministry, which will be, put up for the benefit of the potential film shooters. In my constituency, I have 2-3 very beautiful lakes. The people living there think the most beautiful, जैसे अपने को सबको नाज है वो जगह में. तो मेरे पीछे पड़ गए, साहब क्या हुआ? मैंने कहा भाई इंतजार करो, अगली सूची में आएगा. Then I got all of them सरपंच भाई. I told them, ले ये देखो भैया, इस सूची में क्या नाम है? डल, झील डल. है तुम्हारी औकात झील डल के बकार नहीं? इसमें क्या है? ऊटी है नहीं सामने. तो मैंने कहा फिर एक मापदंड के अनुकूल हम चल रहे. And I could convince all of them. Of course, later on, the list is getting extended. बट इफ वी से कि नहीं साहब मैंने ऐसा किया था, अपोजिशन वाले ने नहीं करने दिया, या मैं तो कहता हूँ मेरा सेक्रेटरी नहीं मानता। अब जब वो कहता है मेरा सेक्रेटरी नहीं मानता तो मतलब नालायकी मेरी है कि सेक्रेटरी की, ये भी आप जवाब दीजिए। So I think time has come to be very forthright objective. So we are actually changing the culture, not only in our working, also in our social thinking. This is what has happened through the reforms. And I think one of the latest uh, achievements by this department, which of course do not form essentially the part of the subject, is the Swachhata campaign, because this department had been entrusted the responsibility of being the nodal agency for government. And you will be glad to know they earned 600 crore rupee just by clearing of the scrap and deposited in the government exchequer. So all this, and now you would realize कितना आप घर में पड़े आपके 10 मोबाइल, उनको उठा के बेचिए कितनी कीमत है, श्रीनिवास जी बताएंगे आपको. And all of us, I'm sure everybody sitting in this hall has done that. You purchase a new one, the child purchase a new one, throws the one. So somewhere it is the mouse lying all alone, lonely life, or the TV or a computer lying without the partner. If you gather all these and sell it, there are there who will purchase it, assemble it, and sell it back to you. So that is another new benchmark created by this department. And before I conclude, I think we have been able to create some of the success stories in governance, which are now only being emulated, not only worth emulated across the country, but they are also being cited across the world. Like, for example, our vaccine story. So it's not only, of course, this department belongs to me, biotechnology, because I'm dealing with a number of departments, and scientists did all the trials in Faridabad. But at the same time, the administrative support that was given to that, a separate team was launched, Mission Suraksha, and monitoring group was comprised consisting of different departments. And Prime Minister himself used to do the monitoring. As a result, we were able to give the first DNA vaccine for COVID to the world. So unless you have a good governance support, you are not able to carry forward even the scientific pursuit. So that has, and this is being cited all over the world. Also because India is a country which is not expected to care much for protective healthcare. Even if you fall sick, you don't go to doctor. You wait for your mother's Ashirwad. Or other way, to Pishle Janam ka Karam. So both ways. But here, we have become leaders in protective healthcare. It's a model of governance, which I was telling the other day, many were taken aback because they don't think of those lines. Because these successes, even in our technology pursuits, have been possible. Our Chandrayaan is another. They call it a success of ISRO, of course. In fact, when Aditya was launched and I was asked to officially announce the success, I said the launching is ISRO's. The mission is whole of science and whole of governance. Virtually every institute was asked to contribute. And whole of governance, why? Because in 2020 you opened up space to all the stakeholders. Heavy investment happening there. Earlier on, nobody could go inside the premises of Sriharikota. Now we had 10,000 spectators on the launching site, 1,000 media persons. And so you owned it, all pooled resources. So these are all governance modifications which have also supplemented our other projects. Our Saumitra program, this mapping and landforms. And this is also going to do with a lot of the corruption that was happening, going to bring in transparency. My first thought, out of my curiosity, went to the panchayat, which had been totally put in Saumitra. So I wanted to see how it was happening with this use of space technology and drones. And they said now entire panchayat can be mapped by the owner of the land himself. So my first response was, Patwari ka kya hoga? Then I was asking myself whether I made an inappropriate remark, because you have to be always politically correct, when you are here. But 3 months later, I felt vindicated when in a newspaper I read Patwari is on strike for pay hike. So for the first time, Patwari, who never bothered to gather salary. But this is also because nowadays, in the next generation, their culture will also have to change. All these extraneous sources would get plugged. And they're going to happen. If we don't do it, artificial intelligence will do it. If you don't sound the alarm, in fact, in the Prevention of Corruption Act also, I'm in the process of introducing artificial intelligence. Only yesterday I sat with the new DST secretary, who's done a lot of work. Through artificial intelligence, you can pick up a representation. You can make out how much is false, how much is truth. But I only said don't overdo it. Some officers may get. So I think we have to get used. The Patwari also has to get used. I have to get used. So the times are changing. But these are some of these because we are a heterogeneous country. So our stories are being cited in the rest of the world. Our Gati Shakti, which was being shown just now. So all these are some of the role model examples which the other countries are also fascinated to see. And therefore, I think now, as is being often said, the Amrit Kal, I think already the groundwork has been done for the next 25 years to 2047. And I'm sure in the next regional conferences, because I'm glad that my suggestion, Srinivasji was very kind to start a project on Vision 2047. So we'll start having more of attention to those aspects to train the young officers who are going to be around for the next 25 years to put in the rest of their energy and their acumen. And they are the ones as collectors who will have the opportunity to host flags on 2047, 100th Independence Day. So we prepare them, worthy of that responsibility. And we take satisfaction that we contributed in their capacity building. So that would be our motive, I'm sure. And the Department of ARP would live up to that. Once again, thank you very much and compliments.